StuGo basically came and went in the blink of an eye, but maybe that's because it was a very boring show. It has a decent premise, focusing on 6 overachieving middle schoolers who go to a mysterious island run by a mad scientist called Dr. Lola under the pretense of being a prestigious summer camp, as they try to adjust to their new surroundings, including mutated talking animals and other weird wacky things. From that concept alone, it sounds like there's a lot of potential for strange creatures and interesting locations for the characters to explore, but the show doesn't really deliver on that. The biggest problem it has is that it's simply too bland for its own good. Episodes are often filled with drawn-out scenes of the characters just talking and not really doing much, and because they're not really interesting to begin with, you're just bored waiting for the plot to progress. But at the same time, a lot of the plots feel very predictable after a certain point, or like they're forcing random elements to make them work, not helped by how so many of them are basically just about the leads encountering some new wacky character they try to help out. When it comes to the characters, the leads are dull as previously mentioned. It feels like the show can't really handle balancing all of them, so some are almost entirely sidelined, like Blinny or Larry. As for the others, Sarah is just incredibly annoying, same with her twin sister that essentially appears out of thin air around the midpoint of the series. Chip is a basic wannabe cool guy, and Marian is an awkward dork and literally nothing else. At least there's Frances, a calm girl who actually has some funny moments and a surprising amount of emotional depth in certain episodes. Dr. Lola isn't bad as a character, but she feels too detached from the kids outside of messing with them to really justify how the season finale pans out. Her assistant, Mr. OK, is completely useless though. The same goes for pretty much every other character, because way too many of them are basically a weirdly designed creature they attempt to give random quirks to, and it makes them feel like a desperate attempt to make the show more unique. Another place the show really struggles with is the humor. It often feels like it's trying to be quirky and unconventional, but it really only feels like an inorganic recreation of other shows. Whenever it tries to catch you off guard with something really strange, it simply falls flat because the whole show is obsessed with trying to be different. They're attempting to go for a style akin to something like regular show, Pickle and Peanut or Jellystone. But what it doesn't understand is that those shows are funny not just because they're weird and surprising, but because they have good comedic execution and identities of their own. StuGo doesn't have an identity, and its attempts to gain one basically amount to throwing in weird details to everything, sometimes to the point it makes plots feel contrived, like Lola not liking one of the kids' games because it doesn't have winners or losers, or Mr. OK having a podcast just to write him out of the story. While this show doesn't really have much continuity, the series finale attempts to feel satisfying by having the kids finally call out Lola on her selfishness, but it tries to establish new things at random, like an entire organization of unconventional geniuses that is actually where the show's title comes from, and a rival for Lola who had literally no build-up, only making it feel more underwhelming that this is how the show ends. I get that it was produced without knowing it would be the only season they'd have, but it still feels like a very disappointing ending. Outside of that, there's the technical aspects. The voice acting is overall very good, the soundtrack is fine but a bit forgettable, and the show's visuals are a bit messy overall. The backgrounds are well designed and colored, if a little on the bland side without much to make them special, while the character design is for the most part bad. Most of the humans look like a mashup between Steven Universe and Craig of the Creek, with needlessly restrained facial expressions, and the creatures, as I've said before, look like they're trying to be as weird and or realistic as possible, to the point of not even looking like they belong in the same show. I think the intention is for them to be a contrast to how the leads look, but there's no real cohesion to the style, so all you're left with is a messy collection of ideas. And as for the animation, it's decent, outside of some choppy movements. But compared to Phineas and Ferb Season 5, it's leagues ahead of it despite both being done by the same studio. There isn't much else to say about the show. It isn't outright terrible, Disney's given us worse as of late, but overall it's simply a boring show that's so obsessed with being different that it only ends up feeling like an assortment of other shows stitched together. Thank you all for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.